Let me switch gears here a little bit. I wanted to, as I mentioned, I wanted to get into this conversation. Let me make sure I got my guy here all set up in the right spots here, and let me bring him in. As I mentioned, we lost a giant. We lost a giant today. And when you're talking about Hammer and Hank Aaron, who broke a barrier, home run barrier. I'm not going to try to. I'm going to guess the year. I'm going to see if Sid will correct me. I think it was 1974 when he broke the record, but I'm going. Okay. You know what? Hey, let me get my guy. Let me get my guy back on here. Let me get my guy back on here. Brother Sid, how you doing today, man?
Miguel, doing good. Today's been a challenging day, but we were doing great.
So I got the year right, 1974.
1974, absolutely.
Wow, wow.
Yes.
Sometimes I amaze
And,
myself the things I remember.
well,
715 home runs broke Hank Aaron's record. I mean, not Hank, but Babe Ruth's record. Excuse me.
yep.
In 1974, but he's much more than a baseball player to you. He meant a whole lot more to you. Tell us about your relationship with Hank Aaron.
So, a lot of people, well, most people are, of course, going to remember Mr. Aaron because of what he did on the baseball field, which was phenomenal. I mean, world class, truly, unbelievable records that many won't be broken. And he did it in a very quiet and very unassuming manner.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to, of course, the internet and everything we have now, everything he did was kind of passed down by word of mouth almost, and
Right.
by newspapers, by
Mm-hmm.
the traditional forms of media. But he did it in a very modest manner. But that, being put aside, he was a business person,
Right.
and people don't realize the extent of his business empire that he generated.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Aaron, he told me a story that when he received, he said the most money he ever made playing baseball back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s was $100,000 in one year. He said that he actually asked his general manager at one point, "Can you pay me 50,000 and keep 50,000 for me for later?" Because he just never had that kind of money. And of
Mm.
course, now we know that there are guys out there that make 100 grand a game,
Yeah.
and he was making 100 grand a year.
Wow.
So he was smart. He parlayed the money that he did make into restaurant franchises. And as you know, he was a Churches and a Popeyes franchisee.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, he was an Arby's franchisee in Milwaukee. He's also had a couple of Krispy Kreme locations. And then in 1998, actually, late 98, BMW had an issue. Their issue was they didn't have any place in the country an African American owner. They had
Mm.
owners who were quote unquote minorities,
What year was
but
this?
this was 1998.
1998.
So
Okay.
think about it, 1998. I mean, not that long ago, there was not a single black-owned BMW dealership in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, who drives BMWs?
Oh,
And we
yeah.
will not be so
Right.
with the ownership. So that being said, a few things had to be put in place, but Vic Doolan, who at the time was the president of BMW, South African,
Mm-hmm.
he lived through apartheid. He saw what happened, and he had a goal. He said, "Look, I want to put in place 10 African American owners." But Mr. Aaron was the first, and it was kind of reflective on Vice President Harris's comment that her mother told her she's going to be the first, but hopefully not the last with whatever she does.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Aaron was the first. He and I were the first. We owned the first black-owned BMW dealership in the U.S. And soon afterwards, we didn't quite hit 10, but 8 came after we did.
So let me back. I want to
And
pause you there for a second because you just said something very key. He brought you in as a co-owner with the
so it
BMW
was
dealership, correct?
well, no, not initially. So
Okay.
initially, I was actually. So you got to think about this, Miguel. I was a salesperson. I was selling BMWs
Mm-hmm.
in, the dealership at Chris BMW,
Yeah.
right there on Church Street.
Yes.
I was a salesperson.
Okay.
I got a call from I got a call from his attorney's office one day and said, "Look, Mr. Aaron would like to talk to you about the possibility of being the general manager for his new dealership."
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a prank call. I hung the phone up. So I go back and I said, "Well, maybe this was real." So I called the guys back, made an appointment with them, went in to see him at the stadium, and sure enough, he said, "Look," he says, "Mr. Aaron, I don't know how to be a general manager." He looked at me and said, "You'll learn." He said, "There's not a single black general manager in the U.S. There's not a black-owned BMW dealership in the U.S. So why can't we do this?" And that's where it's. So we ended up getting BMW. Soon afterwards, we had the first Mini Cooper dealership in the state of Georgia from anybody. Then we purchased a Honda dealership, a Toyota dealership, and then he made me co-owner and vice president of a Jaguar Land Rover dealership that were awarded to him in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay.
So in a very short period of time, he went from not being in the car business to having 7 dealerships. But he was very, very smart. He said, "Look, I don't know anything about the car business, but what I do know is how to put together a team," which, as we know, is what he did. With what he did,
Absolutely.
And he hired the best of the best in Atlanta that he could. It was challenging because we were on the south side. We were on Hillsborough Road in Union City. And if you know, most people of affluence live where? They live north of,
North of the city. North of the
of
city.
I-20. Absolutely.
Correct.
To get folks to come south of I-20, we had to figure out how can we attract the right employees to come south of the city to work. We did something pretty outstanding. We said anybody who works for us, anybody, I don't care if you're a porter or if you're the general manager, we paid 100% of their health care. We paid it all.
Wow.
We gave the managers family coverage, 100%. So, we're talking about a huge bonus.
Yeah.
And not only that, when they saw they could work for a legend who would actually be at the dealership every day, that started the progress. And, when he and I talked about it, and we talk about it all the time, he said, "Look," he said, "the only job I feel that I've got is to put people in place that wouldn't have an opportunity he did." And as you know, with him being a mentor to our group, he wanted to make sure that any of us had opportunities that wouldn't necessarily be presented to us if he could kind of guide us in the right direction. Because, with him being a world-class icon, things are presented to him that, you and I would never have the opportunity to normally get in front of us.
Absolutely.
I would have never had the opportunity to be a general manager or to be a co-owner of dealerships or, anything of that magnitude, and certainly not be in a position that I'm in now. Because now, actually, and this is, 2021, I'm the only Black general manager of a Bentley dealership globally. I mean, in the whole world.
Wow.
We had a national dealer conference, teleconference this morning to kick off the year with the president of Bentley and the vice president, and we got some great news. We are now the #1 ranked Bentley dealership in the U.S. We are #2 in the world.
Wow.
number one being Beijing. I don't know if we can ever beat Beijing, but
yeah, that's gonna be tough,
but again, I mean, I promise you, I would not be sitting in that seat if it were not for the movements he made and positions he helped put me in along the way.
If you don't mind sharing, you sent something out to us to our group, and you talked about his relationship with you as a father figure. Do you mind sharing that story?
So it's interesting. He Mr. Aaron has he has a number of kids. He has 2 sons, 2 daughters. One daughter is adopted from Mrs. Aaron. But if for some reason he really kind of took me under his wing and had a more than just a employer-employee business partner, co-investor relationship with me. And the thing that we would always do is, try to point out things that maybe I didn't see, that movements that I didn't see were happening in the business world, because he'd been around so long, and being a person of color, he could see things that were happening that maybe I was too naive to really envision or accept that people would act in a certain manner.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I mean, he and I became very, very, very close. And he would, kind of temper me a bit and say, look, don't let this bother you because this is going to happen eventually. And I promise you, everything that the positions that he guided me in, they all came to fruition.
Yeah, that's one thing I can say. Fortunately, with our relationship with the 100 and seeing your interaction with him, um, there's just some people that you look at and you just say these people are very genuine people. And
Oh, but
oh
he's very authentic, very
yeah,
authentic.
very authentic. And he and we often have the honor of having Ambassador Young to be in his presence often. And I just when I saw that come across this morning, I immediately thought about you because I said, man, I know this is as much as this. I feel for him because he's an icon. This is one of our legends. This is someone who we aspire to. But I said the relationship that you have with him is something different. I want, of course, we mourn. We spend some time mourning. But what? Tell us one thing. Tell us a story about Mr. Aaron you want to share with us before we drop off.
It's interesting. Here was a gentleman that, when we decided to divest and sell the dealership, that nobody could have envisioned if you were in business back in 2007, 2008, 2009, what was about to happen with the banking collapse, with real estate collapse in 2008. In 2007, I found it very interesting that he had the insight and intuition. He came to me, he said, it's time for us to start selling the dealerships. And I said, Mr. Aaron, what are you talking about? He said, something I just feel like something's going to happen, and let's prepare ourselves and let's maybe start putting together and finding some buyers for dealerships. And I'm thinking, immediately I'm thinking, what is going on?
Right.
Because we were doing so well. That was our 8th year of operation. We had done 100 million sales. But he had that insight. He had that intuition. He had that gut feel. And Miguel, we sold the last dealership we had in November of 2007. And what happened in 2008? An absolute implosion with banking and with real estate. And outside of real estate, the industry that was hurt the most was automotive.
Yeah.
Because automotive an automotive dealership is two businesses combined. You have a real estate venture, which is, of course, your dirt, and then you have your actual dealership franchise. And we saw so many dealers go out of business because they were leveraged so heavily, and the money would come in. And then the banks were calling loans. The banks were wanting to have all their stuff back. But Mr. Aaron, he saw something coming, and we ended up selling the last dealership. And the most proud moment ever was to hand him a check for 9 figures. So here's a man that people did not think was, number one, they didn't think he was involved in the dealership. They didn't think he owned the dealership. He owned 51% of it. But he walked away from the table with a check for 9 figures. But the better part of the story is this. He never moved off of Adams Drive in Southwest Atlanta. He never drove anything except for a Honda Pilot. And he didn't change anything that he did except for he wrote Spellman a check for $6 million. So, here's a guy that took the fruits of his labor, and it's not about getting stuff. He said, "What can I do with what I've received to help expand, my universe larger and have people when I'm gone?" So I just found that to be pretty ironic. You had somebody check for $100 million that they're heading to a dealership to buy a new car. He said, I got a Honda. I don't need another car.
So well, brother, all I can say is you represent him very well. I'm proud to call you friend and the work that you're doing. Obviously, some people on the show have heard about the story where the kids got laptops in the city of Atlanta last year, and it was due to this gentleman right here on the screen. You definitely make Brother Hank Aaron, his memory live on. So RIP, have a great weekend. I know it's going to be a little tough for you, but, if you need me, I'm here, brother.
Thank you. Thanks, Miguel.
All right.
Good talking with
you. You too, man.
All right.
All right.